Welcome. So today's session is designed for women in business who are already producing high six to $1 million in revenue, who are navigating the transition from the growth phase, which is under a million, to the scale phase, which is a million plus and beyond. So if you're here and you're early in business, you are welcome to stay, but parts of this may not fully apply yet. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit. When businesses approach or cross that 1 million mark, this is where challenges truly shift. Okay. Revenue is no longer the primary constraint. You have validated the business. You have $1 million in revenue. And let me just say, too, that if you've already hit that million, congratulations. Only 2% of women entrepreneurs will hit $1 million in revenue. And so if you have not celebrated that milestone yet, please do something today to celebrate it. I didn't realize how monumental that was back in 2010 when I hit my first million. Instead of celebrating, I was sobbing in my car, but that's a story for another day. But I really want to encourage you to do something today in order to celebrate that because it is so huge. So back to, revenue is no longer your primary goal. Your primary goal when you hit a million becomes structure, the foundation of your business. Okay. When I was invited to be on the McCord daily TV show out in LA in November, I talked about the 4 core pillars that are required for sustainable scale. And in an 11-minute episode, if you've ever done TV, then you know that you can introduce a concept, a system, a framework, but you can't fully unpack it in 11 minutes. And that's why today I'm going to share with you the episode that I'm very proud of. But also, we're going to unpack it further so that way you can understand not just the 4 pillars that I kind of dip my toe into on the show, but really get the full understanding of what's required for $1 million business to scale sustainably. So let's watch the segment, and then I'm going to walk you through everything that I couldn't say in just 11 minutes. So let me share my screen. Okay. Here we go. Okay.
Hi, I'm Rachel McCord, executive producer, host, and creator of the McCord List Today. Hi, friends. Welcome to the McCord List Today. I'm Rachel McCord, your talk show bestie. And I'm really excited because we're about to have a conversation with the fun business coach, the one you want to know. I am talking about the one and only Salem Doyle. She is going to talk about her incredible legacy program and so much in between. So let's get into it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm thrilled. Okay, so we have been long awaiting your arrival. You and I connected a long time ago about your projects. Obviously, you have built an incredibly influential coaching program that helps people really scale their business. But I love what inspired you to start it. So take me back to the burnout.
Oh my gosh. So I started my first business in 2007 with a dream to reclaim control over my time and money. Fast forward 3 years, I am sobbing in my car, 9 a.m. on a weekday, because I had just covered another shift for a team member that had called out sick. And after working 80 plus hours a week for the past 3 years, sure, I should have been celebrating the $1 million in business, but instead I realized like this was not what I dreamt success was going to be, right? If this was success, I don't know if I wanted it. And so that was my like draw a moment, like draw a line in the sand moment and really say like something has to change. And so I spent the next 2 years figuring out how to rebuild my business foundation. And once I did, it was truly like a money making machine. And now I took everything I learned that because women asked me, how'd you do it? And I turned it into a 90-day program called the Legacy Business School. And that's what I help women do. It helps them prep to be able to scale their business to $1 million and beyond.
I love that. And it was interesting. You said that only 2% of women will reach $1 million in revenue. And why do you think that is?
You know, I had no idea. When I made my first million back in 2010, I had no idea like how impactful that really was. So when I learned that statistic of only 2% of women this year, I personally think that's crap. Because here's the thing, there is no secret to hitting $1 million. All it comes down to is just 4 core pillars. And it seems like we're always chasing that shiny object syndrome or that secret hack or tip or trick. And really, there is no secret. These are the 4 core pillars that I use to triple my business, go from 80-hour weeks to just 16. But also, it's the same 4 core pillars that big businesses like Amazon, Apple, Airbnb, like all of them use. And so I think what women think is that we're looking for this shiny magic fix when it really comes down to the foundation in business, rebuilding that foundation to get your business to that level.
Incredible. Can you speak directly to what are the 4 core pillars that you teach?
Yeah, exactly. So the first one is your structure. It's all about getting clarity on what you want, what your business stands for. In 2025, you got to put a stake in the ground and say, this is what I stand for as a business. And then you really need to come up with a signature offer or program. That is so important. It's what you're known for. The second pillar is systems. So when you have the clarity, you can then build the systems in order to set you free. Everything from how you plan your day, week, month, quarter, to how you onboard new clients, offboard clients, bring on team members, everything in your business. That sets us up for pillar 3, which is your support team. Most of the women that I work with have hired a virtual assistant, and 90% of the time, the reason it doesn't work out is not because the virtual assistant couldn't do the job. It's because the entrepreneur didn't set them up to succeed. So we don't have that clarity. We don't have the systems. That's why the VA is in your inbox 24/7. You're fixing their work. You're having to micromanage them. And it's because you miss those pillars. That's why we build upon them. And then once we move into pillar 4, that is streamlining. So it's all about technology, tools, and automations, right? We want you to be able to run your business 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and make money while you're sleeping, doing fun things, living your one epic life. So that's the 4 core pillars that every single successful business needs in order to scale to $1 million and beyond.
Okay, I'm obsessed with you. I'm like, I need you in my life. I need you in all my besties' lives. I mean, I love the way you've put this together. I love how articulate you are. And I love the fact that it's also true. I mean, right? I say all the time to people, like, we need to make it dummy proof. I started working when I was 13 years old in this little pizzeria, and I was working with one of those wild founders. And it was just out of pain that I started creating processes and systems, because I was like, wait, I keep having to hire people, because at 16 I was managing it. And then I was like, I'm hiring these people, but they don't care about this job. This is like a restaurant. They're like, oh, I've got a date, never mind, you know? And so I'd always be like teaching a new person all the time, and it was so annoying. So I started documenting everything. And now, years later, after I sold my first company, I'm always like, can we make it dummy proof? Can we make it dummy proof? And I always say, paint by numbers. And I hear you saying that when you talk about the systems. I think if I look back at my entrepreneurial journey, I've probably done those really out of order. But I think I could really understand why so many people would see transformation in their businesses working with you in that type of structure, because I feel like it's a game changer. What have you seen to be the biggest, I guess, response that you've gotten from the people who have seen the transformation? Because I can see it all in my head, like, oh, yeah, duh, that's going to work. And sometimes, even if you think you know it, having a coach to just guide you, support you, encourage, and activate you is a huge piece.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, 50% of what I do is coaching on strategy and systems and all of that. But the other 50% of what I do is really being that cheerleader for clients until they have enough confidence and belief in themselves in order to do it on their own, right? And that's so important. That's why you hire a coach. But, really on average, clients within the first 2 to 3 weeks, they're saving 20 to 30% of their time back. Then usually by the end of the 90 days, they're getting 50% of their time back. And on average, they're increasing their revenue by about 50% within 90 days. And my goal is not to overcomplicate things. So I like to take really hardcore business strategies and simplify them and then have women execute them, right? Again, there's no secret. So let's just keep it simple, do the work, take the action, and then live our one epic life.
Wow. How did you learn all this? Like, genuinely, it's so inspiring to talk to you. I'm like, oh my goodness, I just totally see it, and I see you love it. Like, you come alive when you talk about it. Like, how did you get into this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So back in 2006, on a sunny Sunday, I was sitting on my boyfriend's boat, and the girl next to me said, "Hey, what do you want to do later?" And I said, "Start my business." I think she meant for like drinks or dinner, but that's what came out. Monday morning, I walked into the office, and there was this spam email that said, "Have you ever thought of starting a business?" And I was like, "Oh, like it's meant to be." And it was a franchise consulting company. And I looked at everything: dog training, smoothie shops, sub shops, curtain design, closet design, all of that. And nothing really fit. And unfortunately, a couple months later, my boyfriend's father died unexpectedly at the age of 57. And it really kind of hit home for me because it was like, wow, life is short. If I'm going to do this, I need to do this. And so, again, sent my way, a franchise owner was trying to get in with the business I was working with. And I said, "This is a franchise?" And she said, "Yes." A month later, I had signed on the line and bought a franchise. And the reason I did is because it's that business in a box, right? And so that franchise network taught me systems and onboarding and all of those different kinds of things. What I didn't realize was they sold me a 40 owner operator business model, right? They wanted me in the business 40 hours a week. I didn't want to do that. And so I had to figure out how to take their business in a box and make it work for me. And that's how I was able to build a multi-million-dollar business in 16 hours a week.
Okay, I love your brain. I love your brain so much. So moving forward, as you look at the future for you, like obviously I see you, I'm like, oh my goodness, you could probably be on the board of so many companies. You probably already are. Like, what are some of your goals coming up in the next season for you and your companies?
Yeah. So right now, two goals: impact and profit. So first of all, I sold my first business, my franchise, in 2017. And at that point, it was like, what do I really want to do? I had achieved my goal to retire before age 40. And I wanted to be able to give women what I had: the time, the money, the flexibility, the energy. And I really said, like, how can I make the biggest impact? And that was helping women entrepreneurs, right? Because I help you and then you help others and it just goes around, right? And so that's when I got into coaching. And what I think is so important is impact and profit, because so many women look at their bottom line and they don't understand why they're not making the money that they should, right? It's not just about the revenue. They're always feeling broke, like they're barely paying the bills. And so teaching women how to get the most profit out of their business with systems and using the right support team and using technology and tools, those are like my big things that I'm going to be working on over the next year, and just helping as many women get through this 90-day process as possible, because then we can impact bigger and better.
Oh, wow. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom. Thank you for what you're doing to make a big impact in the world. And I love that focus of impact and profit, because I think a lot of people who want to make a big impact, they can't always think about the profitable side, and then they burn out or they just run out of resources and they have to go back to something that maybe doesn't have their heart. So I love that your mind is on that and that you're helping so many. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure.
Same. Thank you so much, you guys, for tuning into this conversation on the McCord List today. I'm Rachel McCord.
So thank you to Rachel McCord and the McCord List team. It was absolutely phenomenal to work with them in LA this past November. So let's really break down what I high level talked about in those 4 core pillars. So here's the thing. The $1 million mark is not the finish line, right? So many women are like, if I can just get to 1 million, if I can just get there. It is truly the point where your structure is tested the most in business. And you heard me say that when I crossed the $1 million mark in my first business, which was a senior home care franchise, I realized something very uncomfortable in my gut, and that my business was not as profitable as I wanted it to be, and which meant that it wasn't going to be as scalable as I wanted it to be. So I had a $1 million business on the outside. I had a 6-figure salary. On the outside, everything looked successful, but behind the scenes, I knew that I couldn't scale any bigger because I was working 80 plus hours a week, right? My revenue was strong, but my time was not. I had absolutely no time extra to give. And so trying to sustain 80 hours going forward at the 1.5 to $3 million mark just really weighed on me, because I knew that I had no more time to give. I was at a capacity. Okay. This is when I stopped focusing on growth and started focusing on the structural strength and redesign of my business. So most $1 million businesses are built on owner intensity, right? Like you're going, you're pushing, you're driving, you have ambition, you have momentum, you have all of that, right? So what built that first million though cannot sustain the next one, because just like me, I was working 80 hours a week. I had no more hours to give. So if 1.5 to 3 was going to take more hours, I was at max capacity, right? And the thing about it is complexity really increases faster than most of us realize. You know, at 100,000, business is filled with lots of tasks that we're doing, a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving pieces. But when you get to the $1 million mark, the complexity of those pieces gets really, really difficult. So it's kind of like, you know, when you have a puzzle that is like a big piece puzzle, right? So at 100,000, you have big pieces that you're moving around. When you get to 1 million, you have one of those little tiny piece puzzles and you just have a lot more moving parts going. And you're like, okay, how do I get them all into this beautiful picture, right? So I want you to think of this as increasing your output, right? This is what the goal is here, without reinforcing the structure is what is causing you these issues at the $1 million mark. So let me ask you this question, because this is kind of the pressure point. This is the audit. If you stepped away from your business tomorrow for 30 days, would your revenue stabilize, decline, or stall. Okay? Think about that. Now, the most common issue at this stage is you have this dependency of your business on your shoulders and you don't really realize it, right? So you are a bottleneck, which you probably don't even realize, but everything requires you to sign off on, right? So client delivery, maybe vendor approvals, new projects, website design, like all of those different kinds of things. You're like, yes, 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 right? You are approving everything. And there's maybe some leadership layers that execute in your business. So maybe it's you, and then maybe you have a manager, and then maybe you have some employees, right? But no one is owning their role. It's constantly your involvement in order to keep that team chugging, right? So you've delegated, but there's no specific ownership within those positions. And so a lot of the decisions that are made by you all day, every day, are made out of a reactive nature versus being proactive. And so here's the thing, you cannot delegate chaos, right? If you truly want to scale past $1 million in business, it requires decision architecture, right? This is one of those things when you get past $1 million, you have the opportunity to really think about, how is this going to work? What is that big picture and how are things going to flow? So just because you've hit $1 million does not mean that your business is now scalable. Okay. This is why I had to restructure my business back in 2010, is because I had the revenue and I had some profit. I had a 6-figure salary, right? But it was not scalable without me working 80 hours a week. 80 was required to maintain the $1 million, and I had no more. So what I did over the next 2 years was I rebuilt the foundation of the business. It was everything from decision flow to team architecture to operational clarity to leadership structure, right? And what happened is my revenue stabilized. So it was no longer like, what number are we going to be at this month? Like, I hope we hit this number. We have to hit this number. Like, all of that was gone when I dug into the business. And revenue became consistent, and my time actually started to reduce. It was almost overnight when I started this process that I went from 80 hours to 40 hours. It was that like draw a line in the sand moment was so monumental, right? So when you have a business that produces revenue without you involved in every decision, you're not fixing things. Like, let me give you this example. So back in the day, I had an open door policy, but I felt it was more like a revolving door. Okay. Because all day long, my team came in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. And I would just crave 5 o'clock, because at 5 o'clock, everyone would go home. It would finally be quiet and I could get something done, right? I'd throw off my suit jacket, kick off my heels, and I could finally get something done because the revolving door finally stopped, right? They didn't need me at that point. So I want you to think about these different kinds of things. Has your calendar gotten more complex as your revenue has grown, right? Are there more things on your calendar the bigger your revenue has gotten? Has hiring people on your team actually helped or increased your management, right? Was it like a relief to hire that person, or you're like, well, it's a little bit of a help, but I'm still having to manage them day to day, right? Is every strategic shift requiring your intervention? So it's like, okay, we have to review contracts. We have to, how are we going to handle this client issue? How are we going to roll out this new service? Why isn't our numbers meeting? Like everything requires to you. Your team comes to you for everything. And do you have systems in place, but they're not being followed? Think about this. Has your team come to you multiple times during the past 30 days and asked you the same question? Or have you had to fix their work multiple times on the same thing in the last 30 days? Right? So if growth feels heavier instead of lighter at $1 million, the issue is structural. You don't need more sales right now. You don't need more leads. You don't need more clients. What you need is to rebuild the structure of your business, because what this is going to give you is more money, which you're like, how is that even going to happen? And more time. Okay. So the woman who builds the business is not always the same version of the one who sustains it. When I was purchasing my franchise, they told us to reach out to other franchise owners. And I remember calling the owner of the Rhode Island office, and he said to me, the team that you build originally is not going to be the team that stays with you forever, because you're going to evolve, your business is going to evolve, and most of your team members are not going to be able to evolve with you. Okay. It's the same thing about yourself. That woman who built her business on grit and hustle and drive and ambition is not the same woman who's going to be able to take it to $1 million plus and build a scalable business sustainably. You're going to have to evolve. The version of me who built my first million, I operated on intensity. It was go, 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 12 to 16 hour days, right? Go, 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 go all day long and then pass out. I was intense. I was focused. I was get her done, right? Because that's what was needed to get me to $1 million. But the version of me, when I drew that line in the sand in 2010 to get to the next million, right, was not the same person. I had to start thinking differently, dive in, be more strategic, be open to the things that I thought, like, I'm not a numbers person. That was no longer a phrase I could use. Knowing my numbers became a non-negotiable. So let me explain the difference here. In the growth phase, which is women under $1 million in business, you are very owner driven. Everything revolves around you, right? You're very fast actions, like you just like go, 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 go. Like you're scrappy, right? Like you're in that, grassroots, like scrappy stage, or like, let me try this, right? It's kind of like, you're running your own show and you're seeing what's sticking. You're throwing spaghetti at the wall and you're like, okay, did that work? Did this work? Whatever. And you're just kind of like running with it. What needs to shift at the $1 million level as you get into the scale stage of business, which is $1 million plus, is you need to become more structure driven, right? So your business needs to be structured in a way for it to scale without you in the daily operations. It needs to stabilize, right? So we're not constantly working, like our nervous system is not on overdrive 24/7, right? Things have stabilized. Your revenue stabilizes, your nervous system stabilizes, like you can breathe in business, right? That's what needs to shift. And instead of being at that scrappy stage where you're like, I'm trying this, right? And kind of seeing what got you to that million, we're more designing it. We're looking at what is the epic life that you want, and how do we design the business to support that? Yes, that's possible if you didn't know that. So that is the difference, right? From you doing everything to the business running without you, from that fast, scrappy nature to that like stabilized, designed business, right? This is where things really shift. And so at some point, scale stops being about expansion and starts being about reinforcement. This is where my open door policy slowed down to the point that I could actually sit in my office and finish an entire project without someone knocking on my door saying, "Hey, Celine, I have a question for you." Right? It was mind blowing that I was actually able to get stuff done between 8 and 5 without interruptions because it no longer relied on me, right? Such a good place to be. So here's the thing. Everything we've talked about today, the 4 pillars, the structure, the redesign, all of those different kinds of things, this is not theoretical in business. This is a transition that I personally navigated back from 2010 to 2012. And then, as I said in the TV show with Rachel, turned it into a well-oiled money-making machine. My business was a machine. The less I worked, the more we made. And it was because I installed that structure. And now, what I help women at the $1 million mark, very high 6 to low million kind of deal, do is install that same 4 pillar structure into their business. So if during this conversation today, you recognize that your business is owner driven right now, it all focuses on you and you showing up, and you can't leave for 30 days right now. If your revenue is grown, but your business is feeling that strain, that structure, those operations behind the scenes is really like the duct tape is starting to peel off and the cracks are showing, then you're likely in this growth to scale transition phase. And it is a great place to be. Here's why. Because when you recognize where you are and you say, let's fix it, guess what happens? You dig into your business and make it so darn strong that you can go from 1 million to however many millions you want because your business has that 4 pillar foundation, right? That is the key. So what is your next step? I have a brand new scale ready blueprint, which is designed as a structural audit for your business. I want you to comment scale. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the link to this audit. It's going to explain in further depth each pillar, and then it's going to ask you some questions of where you are in your business. And then it's going to give you an assessment based upon that and really kind of say, this is where you need like to dig in a little bit because your duct tape is starting to peel away and cracks are opening in your business. And for most of the women that I work with, they know it, right? They know it in their gut. This just kind of puts it front and center for them. And in the blueprint, I'm going to walk you through those 4 pillars even deeper so that way you can see what is needed to build that $1 million business that's ready for 1.5, 2, 3, 4, like that level that you're going to without more owner dependency on you. So this audit is not for everyone. If you are at a lower level in business, if you're closer to low 6 figures, you're probably not ready for this yet. But if you're in the high 6-figure range or the $1 million revenue range, 1.25, higher up to kind of 2 million, this audit is exactly what you need. So comment scale and I will send you the link to the audit. And then once it's done, I want you to DM me and tell me which pillar is the one that you need the most help with. So I want to thank you so much for being here with me today. I was truly excited to share with you the TV episode, and thank you so much for your support over the last couple months of making this happen. And I am here and ready to help you scale your business to the next level. Stay tuned to what's going on social, because something super exciting is coming in April. And if you want early access, just DM me the word early and I'll give you a sneak peek of what's coming. But I hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Comment scale if you want that blueprint that'll allow you to do a quick audit on your business, literally 5 minutes. And then we can have a conversation about what it would look like in order to rip up all that duct tape and rebuild your foundation and get your business so it's structurally supported without you in the daily operations. Have a great day, everyone. Remember to live your one epic life.